by going down the main staircase and out to the War Memorial in front of City Hall. This meeting is being live streamed to the Council YouTube pages and will be available after the meeting. Please, would speakers use the microphones at all times and speak directly into the microphones? And would participation please mute the microphones when not speaking? Members of the committee may use electrical devices to access their meeting papers, and visitors are welcome to use mobile phones and other devices, including cameras, but please use them discreetly and set them to silent so we don't hear the cameras flash or ring. We will have a short break at 12 o'clock if we're not through. We only got the one item on here, so hopefully we are going to be through before 12. And we're just going to go around the table and introduce ourselves who's here. As I said, my name is Councillor Keith Driver and I'll be chairing the meeting, and I'll go to my left.
I'm Amanda Fox and I'm a councillor.
Emma Hampton, councillor for University Ward.
Ash Haynes, councillor for Thorpe Hamlet.
Councillor Claire Kidman, Cabinet Member.
Councillor Jenny Knight for Sewell Ward.
Councillor Judith Lubbock.
Councillor Chris Smith.
Good morning. My name's David Parkin. I'm the Development Manager for the City Council.
My name's Lara Emerson. I'm the Development Management Team Leader for the Council.
My name is Matthew Armstrong Hickey. I'm the Case Officer for this application.
Leonie Berwitt, Senior Committee Officer.
Thank you for that, everyone. We are still waiting for one objector to turn up. We have put people on both doors to bring him straight up here when he arrives, I believe. And but we have got to start the meeting and go through the agenda. So we will go through the agenda as it stands. Apologies for absence.
We've had apologies from Councillors Kane, Harper, Laws, Oliver and Mike Sand, and Councillor Kidman is acting as Councillor Laws' substitute.
Thank you. Declarations of interest, anyone?
I thought I'd better mention that sport and leisure is in my portfolio, but it doesn't make me predetermined for this hearing.
Minutes of the meeting. I hope we
Thank you, Chair. So the proposal is to consider application 25-00687F for the erection of a paddle court on an existing tennis court at the East Anglia Tennis and Squash Club. The site plan pictures shows the setting of the Tennis and Squash Club, which has been in situ since the early 1900s, originally seen as croquet and lawn courts. The site is designated as outdoor space under the protection of policy DM8. The site is bordered on all sides by residential properties of various ages, the oldest established properties being those to the north of the site on Lime Tree Road. A large number of these properties are Grade 2 listed and are located within the Newmarket Road Conservation Area. However, the tennis club is not within the conservation area. The site is also covered by TPO .621 and TPO .111. To the bottom of the site is Daniels Road, which is part of the City Ring Road connecting Ipswich Road and Newmarket Road. As such, this road transports a high volume of traffic throughout the day. There are a number of properties in close proximity to the proposed development site, which are over these two tennis courts in the bottom right-hand corner. These are nearest the properties on Plantsman Close, and consideration has been given to these dwellings, particularly in conjunction with policies DM2 and DM11. Consideration for this application is for a single paddle tennis court, and I will run through what is paddle. So for members that may be familiar with the sport, some may recall the previous application for paddle courts at this site last year. Members may recall application reference 24-00427, which was granted approval for the erection of 2 paddle courts over the existing front car park and the north site boundary. However, for those unfamiliar with the sport, paddle is an emerging racket sport that combines elements of tennis and squash. The game is played across the whole court to an opponent or opponent team over a net, much like tennis. However, the whole game is enclosed within a metal and glass casing with glass panels on the rear and rear sides that allow the ball to rebound, be played off or against these panels, much like a game of squash would be played. The site plan shows the site as existing, notwithstanding the approved development of 2 paddle courts in the front car park area, which is seen over here. The site as existing has 10 outdoor tennis courts, with 2 tennis courts on this area of land and the southern corner of the site, one of which is proposed to be changed for a paddle court. The proposed plan is illustrated above. With this considered, there is no net change in the number of outdoor courts on site, therefore there is no conflict with policy DM8. The above plan zoomed in shows the paddle court and associated seating area that's to be provided. The court is measured as 20 by 10 meters in design, slightly smaller than the existing tennis courts on site. Primary access to the courts would remain unchanged via the existing pedestrian route to the north, and this would lead through the clubhouse to the paddle court. Improvements in outdoor seating are also proposed in the area of land that it currently separates the tennis courts from these set of tennis courts here. The construction of the court would be primarily 3 meters in height on the side elevations, with the additional height of 1 meter, making it a total of 4 meters height on the front and rear ends. Automatic LED lights are proposed to light the court. These would be activated by sensors, so only activated when the court is in use. The light would be directional to only light the court with a minor element of spillage on the sides. The LED floodlights would be 6 meters high, and there would be 4 numbers in total, with each with 2 bulbs, so a total of 8 lights. Considering the position of the existing boundary fence to the closest neighbouring properties and the distance between those properties, it's not anticipated that this lighting would be of considerable negative impact on the amenity or enjoyment of the area or residential properties. The above image is taken from the court proposed to be changed to paddle, with properties 9 to 11 Plantsman Close positioned here on the right hand side, and the gap showing the garden of 17A Lime Tree Road as the nearest residential properties. The image also shows the existing floodlights on the court currently. This next image shows 9 to 11 Plantsman Close, with the image angled more toward the south end of the property boundary toward the rest of Plantsman Close, which loops around the back of the site. These properties share the rear garden boundary with the tennis courts as existing, with the closest court closest to the properties unchanged within this proposal. The impacts of noise and disturbance to these properties have been considered and have been weighed against the existing average background noise levels, which were recorded as 44 to 47 decibels average, as indicated by the applicant's submitted noise impact assessment. Maximum readings for this site were also detected of up to 65 decibels. Using modellings and recording taken from existing paddle court used as the baseline study, it was concluded that the ground levels at 9 to 11 Plantsman Close would be 47 decibels and up to 49 decibels for the first floor should the paddle courts be constructed. These figures do acknowledge some level of harm by exceeding the background noise levels of 2 to 3 decibels. However, this does remain below the recommended 50 decibels average guideline figure for outdoor sport pitches in proximity to residential dwellings. As noted within the committee report, however, this figure is not specific to paddle as a sport, and so it is not the most robust method of assessment. However, in planning terms, it is seen that this impact can be considered acceptable with appropriate conditions applied. In this case, this is in the form of restricted opening hours. Following image shows the gap between the tennis courts, which is proposed to be used for seating. To the rear of the site is a boundary fence and hedging, separating the site from the properties 26 to 31 Plantsman Close. The distance between the rear boundaries of the site and the buildings on Plantsman Close is approximately 15 meters, and this image is taken facing southwest along the street. The following image is taken facing northwest along Plantsman Close. These dwellings are single story and associated with a higher level of background noise on account of being adjacent to Daniels Road to the rear. The readings taken from this site show background readings of 55 to 56 decibels average, with maximum readings of up to 73 decibels. These were based on baseline figures recorded from the impact assessment, and it was modelled that the expected noise levels caused by the paddle courts would be up to 42 to 46 decibels average at these receptive points. As illustrated in the context of 9 to 11 Plantsman Close, a higher level of noise is expected at the upper floors, which aids in the assessment of this impact for this location on account of the dwellings being single story only. In addition, as these dwellings are located to the rear of the courts rather than the sides, there is an average reduction of up to 4 decibels in noise level due to the glass screens. It's concluded that the impacts are either less than substantial in scale or suitably mitigated by the recommended conditions. The condition to restrict operating hours would be less than is currently permitted on any of the tennis courts, which are up to 10 p.m. Monday to Friday in line with the club's current opening times. For members' reference, above are plans approved for 2 paddle courts within the front car parking area, which were approved in the prior application for this site. The application considered the impact of noise, light, design and heritage, and transportation. The application advised that the new application is seen as an alternative scheme to compare cost and viability. The revised scheme comes at a time when the existing courts require resurfacing, which would be a cost within itself for the club. The applicant has advised that the club would determine the most suitable approach for implementing one of the schemes based on the building costs and any planning restrictions. However, for the purposes of this application, it's considered that both schemes could be approved and implemented, and that this would not result in any substantial cumulative impacts that would require any additional restrictions or conditions. As such, the current application is determined on its own merits and is recommended approval on this basis. The application is recommended for approval based on the updated condition list within the updates report, and notably the following opening hours: Monday to Friday 9 AM to 8 PM, Saturday 9 AM to 5 PM, and Sundays and bank holidays 10:30 to 6:30. 4:30, sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Matthew. We have got a few speakers, and the first one, I hope they're here, is Barbara Goodwin. Yeah, please.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Yeah, right. My objection to this is based on the noise nuisance to the neighbourhood dwellings, particularly 9 to 11 Plantsman Close. Noise nuisance is a glib sort of phrase. It could be dismissed as just a bit of inconvenience, temporary inconvenience. But intrusive noise can affect mental health. Additionally, the constant noise of paddle being played would detract from the peaceful enjoyment of their gardens and their houses, particularly for 9 to 11 Plantsman Close and more distant Plantsman Close members, dwellers. I think the WBM noise impact assessment, which I'm sure you have all read, supplied by the club, it relies on the standards set for artificial grass pitches, comparison with which is misleading. Football, rugby and similar games played sometimes on artificial grass pitches are played in the open. The action moves around the pitch, the noise is dispersed. Paddle noise is concentrated in one small area on a court surrounded by glass and metal mesh walls, which amplify the sound. Decibels are measured on a logarithmic, not a linear scale. So the statement that a 3 decibel increase from 44 to 47 decibels is only slightly perceptible is questionable. A 3 decibel increase is clearly audible and will double the intensity of the sound because of the logarithmic nature of decibels. So the objections to the present proposal are the same as to the club's previous application for the 2 paddle courts: unacceptable noise disturbance, intrusive noise for the neighbours. That application was granted despite numerous objections, one of them being mine, of course. Since then, there's been a great deal of evidence relating to the high resonance impact of paddle courts in residential areas, as I'm sure the committee members have become aware. The development of new sporting facilities is part of the council's remit, as we heard last time. But these facilities should be developed in suitable locations. In Whiffler Road, 8 paddle courts are going to open September next month. Whiffler Road, of course, is quite different sort of location from the club. It's on an industrial side, basically, with no near neighbours, no human dwellings nearby. That's much more appropriate as a location for paddle if the council wishes to promote paddle as a healthy form of sport. In Taverham, 4 courts have been approved, 4 paddle courts. An application for 3 paddle courts in Horsford have just been submitted. So if you reject this application, Norwich will not be short of paddle courts, and no doubt more will come at the David Lloyd Centre and places like that. So my argument is the club's premises are not a suitable or appropriate location for paddle. There will soon be ample provision for paddle in the larger Norwich area. That's it. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Davis. Karen?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members, for allowing me to speak. I want to make clear at the outset that I value the East Anglian Tennis and Squash Club and the role it plays in sport locally. However, planning law requires you to balance sporting benefits against the very real harm to the amenity of neighbouring residents. Firstly, paddle is not tennis. It is consistently noisier, with sharp, repetitive impacts from balls striking glass and mesh, and with more vocal player interaction. The Council's own Environmental Protection Officer recognises that this court will cause a slight impact in the later evening, with noise levels up to 5 decibels higher than the existing background levels at first floor bedrooms in Plantsman Close. That is above the accepted threshold for harm under the World Health Organisation standards. It's also important to note that there is no national guidance specific to paddle courts. Officers have relied instead on Sport England's standards for artificial grass football pitches, a completely different type of activity. Using inappropriate benchmarks to justify harm to residents is not sound. The location is unsuitable. The already approved paddle courts are located at the front of the site, away from the most sensitive boundaries. This new court, by contrast, is positioned directly against the rear gardens of Plantsman Close. If the principle of paddle has already been accepted, it is no justification for putting a noisy facility at the most harmful edge of the site. There are 2 paddle courts already consented at the front of the site. If this application is approved, there will be 3 in total. Yet I could find no cumulative noise assessment carried out. The environmental health comments seem to be based only on this single court in isolation. Without cumulative modelling, the committee simply does not have the full picture. To grant permission in the absence of that evidence would risk authorising a level of harm to residents that has not been properly assessed. The glass and steel enclosures will be an intrusive feature on the site boundary, out of character with open tennis courts, and in the setting of Grade 2 listed dwellings and the conservation area. Parking demand has also not been properly addressed, despite the limited marked provision on site. In conclusion, this proposal is materially different from the front of site courts already approved. It places a noisier activity right against residents' gardens and risks significant cumulative impact. I therefore respectfully urge members to refuse this application, or at the very least to defer it until a proper cumulative assessment has been carried out. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have the applicant here, Chris Evans. Thank you. And you have 3 minutes as well. Thank you.
Morning. Chair, members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity to speak this morning. I'm here to support the application for the new paddle court at the East Anglia Tennis and Squash Club. My comments cover 3 parts: the growing popularity and community demand, the financial sustainability of the club, and the fact that this proposal looks to replace an existing tennis court already in use. So, firstly, paddle is the fastest growing racket sport in the UK. It's fun, social, and easy to learn, making it accessible for beginners, families, older players, and those with additional needs. At our club, we've already seen a strong demand for paddle from members and the wider Norwich community. We also run a successful disability programme and see paddle as a way to expand our inclusive offer, giving more people the chance to be active. Importantly, paddle does not replace tennis, it complements it. The club will still have plenty of tennis courts, but paddle brings in new participants, keeps members engaged, and strengthens our role as a community hub. Secondly, like many community clubs, we face ongoing costs of maintaining courts and facilities. Without new income streams, many sports clubs risk decline. Paddle provides vital new revenue, supporting not only the paddle court, but also the upkeep of existing courts, the clubhouse, and the wider community programs. This is not just about a new court, this is about securing the future of a valued community facility that has served Norwich for almost a century. Lastly, the proposal is not about creating a completely new activity on unused land. It's about repurposing an existing tennis court that is already in use daily until 10 o'clock. The paddle court will actually operate under shorter restricted hours until 8 p.m. on weekdays, 5 p.m. on Saturdays, and 4:30 on Sundays and bank holidays. So in other words, residents will have more respite than they do at present. We already have permission for 2 paddle courts in the car park, but in listening to our neighbours, we are considering this option, converting an existing court, which we believe is a more considerate solution. Noise and lighting have been professionally assessed and meet Sport England and the World Health Organization guidelines. A noise management plan will also be in place, and floodlighting will only come on when the court is in use. So, in summary, this proposal provides a modern, inclusive sport to meet community demand. It strengthens the financial sustainability of the club and replaces an existing court with one that has shorter hours and stronger controls for residents. The planning officer has recommended approval with conditions, and I respectfully ask the committee to support that recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Did the planning officer wish to come back on anything what was said?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to touch on the base of the, I suppose, Sports England modelling. So yeah, we do acknowledge it is not the most robust method of assessment, because ultimately it does use sort of reference to artificial pitches, football, rugby, etc. We have been a conservative in our approach to recommending approval for this application on that basis, and have utilised the references made within the noise impact assessment as to what the background noise levels are, and that has guided the most suitable recommended operating hours, which are to be secured by a condition if approved.
Thank you. And now move to questions to the planning officer. Questions, not discussion. Councillor Haynes.
Yeah, I've got a couple about page 23 of the report and the bit about the noise. Firstly, I mean, it says in point 86, it says that the that's 86 paragraph. Yep, it's on the bottom of the previous page. Goes over onto that page. It's about the particular addresses. It says 49 decibels for the first floor rooms at numbers 9 to 11, and then in paragraph 90 it says that's within the 50 decibel allowance, but it's pretty damn close, isn't it? Like how confident are we that if it's projecting at 49 that it can remain within that 50 decibel guidance? I've got another question that's linked, if that's okay, which is about paragraph 92, where you say that on account of this being an existing court, you're allowing slightly longer hours because there's already noise. But I think there is a fair argument this is noisier. So do we think that's fair? Or personally, do we think it's, you know, why was that decision made to make it longer on the site that's actually closer to houses? I know you've said it's because of the existing thing, but I think this is noisier. How was that factored in?
Yeah, thank you. So to touch on the first question, so within the guidance from the World Health Organization, there is a what essentially is the desirable limit, which is equal or less than to 50 decibels. There is an upper guideline of up to 55, which is given by the World Health Organization. So now I appreciate people have said that there is a general, amount of noise generated and the intensity of the noise generated from paddle associated with the play as well. Now we can't rely on kind of reference made to how players play. Anyone can play at a certain level, whether that's tennis or paddle. So we can't really rely on that in planning terms. The intensity of the noise and how it's played against the glass, we do acknowledge. But I think within using the reference from the World Health Organization, given the upper guideline is up to 55 decibels, we do see that as within those limits, and therefore we do think that is acceptable. In the second point you've made, with it being an existing court, we considered the original application within the same considerations, within the same policy, as a new impact, which would be new impact within a different set of neighbours. This particular site does generate that level of intensity of noise. There are 2 tennis courts in close proximity to 9 and 10 and 11 Plantsman Close. The changing of one to a paddle court we don't see as suitably harmful to change any sort of recommendations on that basis.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. Similar question, I suppose, to Councillor Haynes, so apologies if it repeats, but you said yourself you think that the Sport England guidelines we use is not robust, I think was the phrase you used. And we've had our objectors both making reference to the suitability of the framework or the method that we use to reach the judgments that we reach. So could you just say a few more words about why are we basing a judgment on a system that you've described as not robust? What is it within planning requirements, planning law, planning code, and existing Sports England modelling that means we use this and not something else?
Well, at the moment, that is the closest we have in terms of planning guidelines, and I think we'd also need to make reference for members to be aware of material consideration in planning history, and members did approve the original consent for the car park on those same basis. So I think that is relevant for consideration as well.
I just want to add to that. Essentially, this is a new sport, and there is no guidance yet. And we have to assess it on something. So we're using the best available alternative, using our experts in environmental protection to weigh up whether that is a reasonable method. This is the best available method that we have to assess the impacts of a new sport. And as Matthew said, we've been conservative on the basis that the impacts of this sport might be higher, but we've been conservative by restricting operating hours, which we otherwise might not do, and applying a noise management plan for that reason as well.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we've heard that the player interaction with paddle is noisier than than tennis. We're not talking about the noise coming from the ricochet from the surrounding glass walls, but it is the noise interaction. I don't really understand why that should be louder than ordinary tennis. And the second part is could you give us some flavour of the noise management plan that would sort of try and reduce the noise? Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So I mean, I do agree that we don't have any planning control over how loud a group of players 2-4 play on a court. That could be louder in a tennis court depending on how much the players shouted or grunted when hitting a ball. That's not something that we have control over in planning terms. We could have a group of 4 people playing paddle, noise generated from the ball ricocheting off the glass and the bats, but they could make no noise whatsoever in conversation. They could be very quiet. We don't have control over that. In terms of the noise management plan, so the club has provided a matching noise management plan that was approved within the previous consent. The only amendment is the amended operating times, But in terms of some of the things that it covers, it covers the booking and accessibility of the court, and that it's available for members and non-members, but that's always within a pre-booking system. So there will always be, there won't be any kind of any overbooking or overcrowding of a court at any one time. It enforces responsible player etiquette in terms of no alcohol, no food, and that players who behave in an unruly manner will be spoken to by the club staff or trustees, and any repeat offenders would not be permitted to play in the courts in future. It also discusses different elements of coaching and kind of social sessions that the club would promote, and it does encourage that those would be open to members and non-members as well. It encourages school use and certain club activities for schools, and then it also sets out a complaints procedure as well, which would be beneficial for any residents that may want to report an issue, laying out a step-by-step process about who they would contact and the club's responsibilities in response to that.
Councillor Knight?
Sorry, Chair. Before we take that, could I just add a couple of points? First of all, about the method of assessment. As Matthew and Lara have already said, it's the kind of it's the best available methodology at the moment, but it's not the only method that we've used actually to assess the application. You'll note from the comments from the Environmental Protection Officer that they have actually been and observed paddle games being played. So their interpretation of the assessment, the figures produced by the assessment and their accuracy is also informed by observations of games actually being played, and that kind of will take into account some of the issues about levels of player interaction and noise from that. The other point that I'd want to make is this is a slightly different scenario to the one at the front of the site, where that application was to create 2 new courts on a car park. So there was no noise source on that car park at the moment. This is to effectively change from one sport to another. And at the moment, there's no restriction on the use of the tennis court on that site. It's only the club, the chosen operating hours of the club that actually limit that. So the reason we've granted a slightly extended opening hours is because it's a slightly different scenario on this, and you are kind of gaining a level of control that doesn't previously exist at the moment over the use of the court for playing tennis. Thank you. Sorry, Chair.
Sorry, in paragraph 96, it says that the more social sessions are likely to have a lower impact than competitive players. How has that been assessed?
So the social session, so there's not been a formal assessment of that, and this has kind of been given us some information by the club about how they will choose to operate. So we don't have control of how they want, if the courts are built, how their business operates, how they choose to use them is up to the club. In terms of the information the club has provided, that these would be run by a club coach, so there would be that level of what's the word I'm looking for? Supervision is the word I'm looking for, and that there would be maybe some guidance, more kind of stop-start coaching, teaching, and a bit more of a social activity, rather than, I suppose, the intensity of a competitive game of 4 adults playing an intensive game. That's on the basis that's an assumption, but there has no been kind of formal assessment of that.
Thanks, Chair. I was wondering in the noise management plan whether there'd been any consideration given to the potentially mitigating effects of something like acoustic screens or curtains that can be erected on courts.
There was no suggestion of that within the noise management plan. Based on the distance, it was suggested that it wasn't necessary. Given the distance between the properties. I think also taken some kind of guidance on what we assessed on the previous application as well, the nature of sound, how it travels kind of upwards, which is again we pointed out with the 9 to 11 Plantsman Close, it was higher at the upper floors. Any, I suppose, screening would have to be at a considerable height to have, I suppose, any relevant impact to that, and probably at a height that we would then kind of consider the other impacts of the visual impact. And I suppose you'd be enclosing the back of a property with a very high screening wall, and that would have other implications that we may not be approving of.
Anyone else, any questions, Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I believe Councillor Davis asked about cumulative modelling in her speech. I think you addressed cumulative modelling in your report and said it wasn't required. Could you just say a few more words about why it wasn't required? And could you also comment on her suggestion about us potentially deferring it until a cumulative model had been carried out? Is that something we would be in a position to do or not?
In terms of the cumulative modelling, so that, yes, you're right, that wasn't provided. We have assessed the application that it's impacting a different set of neighbours, particularly the ones. So I'll just go back to this screen. 13A and the properties, I suppose, I think it was 6, 8 and adjacent numbers, Lime Tree Road. We see this as a completely different set of neighbours that may be impacted by this proposal. So therefore, the change from noise levels from this site wouldn't have a cumulative impact in any impact that would affect detrimentally the properties on Plantsman Close. So that's why we didn't see it as a cumulative impact. Any background noise levels, there would be some change in background noise levels if taken from within this site, or the background noise levels were taken from within the lower half of the site, tennis courts. So I don't think, again, there's been no modelling, so I can't be certain, but in terms of the background noise level, there wouldn't be likely a significant change in the background noise level. So therefore, this one has been assessed in relation to the background noise level for this area of the site, and it would not likely have been affected by any additional courts at the top end.
Yeah, can I ask a question about can I ask, will this ever get built? I mean, the first plans we agreed, 2 courts, they'd even been started yet. And I was just wondering about, is there a condition in there? I know for 3 years before they have to start building this, but I was just wondering why they haven't started. And if they would have done it, we would have found out about the noise and the excess and stuff. What's happening?
So again, so we didn't require any additional kind of restrictions or conditions based on both of them being implemented at the same time and the cumulative impact. It's our understanding from the club that they would only be, that they're using the opportunity to have 2 different planning applications, 2 different consents, to then choose one of them. So it's our understanding that only one would be implemented, although, like I said, we would not be implementing any restrictions or conditions via planning control to prevent this. But in terms of our understanding that the club is using this as an opportunity to assess the viability of both schemes before choosing one.
I'm afraid you can't talk again, Karen. That's news. Anyone else? Any last questions? Anyone? Councillor Hampton and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Theoretically, if even with the noise management plan and other conditions and measures included here, the noise just is intrinsically intolerable because of imperfect modelling or for whatever reason, can you just recap what the planning or other mechanisms to sort of revisit and revise this might be?
So outside planning, which would be kind of held by environmental protection, there are legislations around statutory nuisance. So if there was an issue, that would be handled kind of via that process within the council's powers, but through environmental protection as a statutory nuisance to investigate the noise issues, and potentially that would lead to any kind of further restrictions or prevention of the use. So those do exist within powers of the council.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies to officers, probably a question is going to reveal my own ignorance more than anything else. But in the hours of operation, proposed Monday to Friday 9 till 5, page 18 on the hours of use, the paragraph 53 makes the point about how background levels drop after 7 p.m. And so then we're stopping operation at 8. So I just wonder, why are we stopping operation at 8, not at 7? If we're saying background noise stops at 7, why not stop the additional court noise then?
Because we see this as an appropriate, because at the moment we are gaining a level of control that currently does not exist. The current tennis clubs, the tennis courts operate until 10 o'clock. So we are gaining control. It is going to be an improvement in terms of the level of noise that can be generated on that site that we are now gaining control over.
Okay, we'll move on. David?
Sorry, just to come back. I don't think we answered Councillor Smith's question about deferment. I mean, if members were of a mind that cumulative impact was greater, then we've more of an issue than we've assessed it as. Then you could defer and ask for a cumulative assessment to be carried out. That's just, I'm not saying that from an officer point of view we didn't feel that's necessary because of the distances involved. The and as Lara and Matthew have said, they're impacting upon different residents, but it is in members' gift to decide to defer and ask for a cumulative impact assessment. Notwithstanding what the club have told us, we're assessing this application as though all 3 paddle courts are going to be built. And that's the assessment that's been presented to you, that all 3 can work and that all 3 would be capable of being used and without a significant material impact. Not to say there wouldn't be some change in the situation. In planning, we're not about saying there'll be no change. We're about mitigating and controlling the level of change. But the assessment here is that all 3 can be used and the mitigation is appropriate. And I think issues about the efficacy of the method of assessment, it is material that the council through this committee has already accepted that basis of that and the use of that methodology in determining the impact on the previous courts. So I hear the concerns that are being expressed, but I don't think it would be appropriate to kind of go back on the previous decision that the committee and the council has made, which basically accepted that methodology was appropriate. There hasn't been any kind of material change between that decision and this decision that would give grounds to cast doubt on that. I know we've heard from some of the objectors, and they say that there has been some additional research, but in terms of the assessment that we have carried out and that your officers and our colleagues in environmental protection have carried out, we're basically using the same assessment methodology that we've already found acceptable at the other end of this site. So I hear the concerns, but I think any issues about that methodology, a decision made on the appropriateness of that or the inappropriateness of that would not be a sustainable decision. So you need to look at what has actually been presented to you and be mindful of the decisions that this council and this committee have already made in terms of paddle courts.
Okay, we'll move on to discussions and quick question, Amanda. Yep.
Yeah, at the moment, like there isn't aren't any guidelines around the paddle courts. Is there anything in the pipeline that you know of? You know, in terms of like so we're being asked to not compare like for like kind of thing. Is there anything in the pipeline that is likely to come out soon that would be worth deferring until after?
Not that we're aware, but it is a fast-growing sport, so I wouldn't be surprised if something comes out at some point. But we're not aware of anything that's in the pipeline at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay. Right, move on to discussions and recommendations. So, did anyone want to bring their thoughts out or make a recommendation for the committee which need to be seconded? And if someone do that, we'll move to the vote on that bit done first. Anyone? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I might have been misheard Matthew's previous comments to your question about the two applications. Am I right in saying you suggested that the applicant, they want a scout out which is the viable, the best one? They might not build one or the other. Is that correct understanding?
Yes, that's what I've been told. But again, we're not issuing at the moment any planning control over that. But yes, that's what we've been told by the applicant.
Yeah, and thank you, David, for your previous comments as well. And obviously, thank you on the cumulative impact assessment. Because again, if they weren't to build one of them for whatever reason, that would obviously make cumulative impact not an issue at all, because there wouldn't be one. But on the other hand, they could build both of them. You understand?
But we've got to take into consideration there's two.
Separate, yeah, judge this case on its own merits, of course. Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Lubbock, did you? Yeah.
If we're on to comment.
Yeah.
Well, it is difficult because we haven't got the precise information, but I think with issues like this, we never have the precise information. But having made the decision last year, I don't think I was at the meeting, so I wasn't aware of just what paddle courts look like, but now I am. I understand the increase in noise from the surrounding protection. And I think we do need to be mindful of that decision, and also mindful of the conditions that we've put in place to mitigate some of the change in the increase in noise, and also that the courts will be more supervised to be able to hopefully suppress some of the interaction between the players, if not other noise. And, you know, I mean, something like, just could you keep the noise down a bit, please, you know, and be respectful of the neighbours. You know, hopefully we'll do it with adults, and as well as perhaps with children if they are being supervised. So we're taking all that into condition and into consideration, and knowing that it is a popular sport with community demand, a disability programme put in place, and the club is going to rely on this for sustainability. We don't have many clubs like this in the city, and that's why probably all these other paddle courts are being built outside the city. It's better that it's being built onto an existing facility rather than outside of the city into perhaps some new facility. But we do need it in the city to make sure that we've got those facilities for our residents. So I am in favour of this, and I hope that any issues that come up will be addressed by the noise management plan, and it's in the interests of the club to make sure that they are good neighbours.
Anyone else? Councillor Hampden?
Yeah, thank you. I think I fully recognise, I think most of us fully recognise that the noise of paddle versus tennis is going to be higher for those residents, and that the methodology may not be perfect, but it is the best available methodology by the sounds of it for what is an emerging sport. And as we've heard, it's not just for the Sport England work that was referenced, but also there was a recording of an actual paddle court involved. From what we've got in front of us, and combined with the noise management plan, conditions and mitigations built into this, I'm struggling to find a reason to not support it. And as Councillor Lubbock says, I think there are clear benefits for the club and its financial viability for residents, community members and club members who want to take part in this kind of fast-growing sport. It sounded positive about some of the benefits in terms of inclusivity this would bring as well. So on balance between those kind of considerations, I'm minded to support this today.
Thank you. Councillor Foulkes.
Yeah, I can well understand the concerns about the mental health impact of like increasing noise. And I think if we were taking this application without the previously approved application, I would like find it more difficult to kind of vote in favour. But as David said, the methodology was accepted for the previous plan, which has been approved. I wasn't on planning at that point. And therefore,
like it wouldn't stand up to to question that methodology now. That would just be overturned in any appeal. So I can't see, although I'm not confident in that methodology, it's been previously used in an approval and I can't see a way to get around that.
Okay, I want to say a couple of things. One, I think the applications are different. One, because that was all on noise last time and car park spaces. So I think the houses were a lot further away and the gardens were a lot further away than they are for this one, which I think is a lot closer and Clarksman close. There is a tennis court still going to be first and then the paddle court next. So you're even going further away from the tennis and placement court. There is a road or pathway between there as well. So I think the noise, not too bad, I would have thought. So I'm going to vote in favour. But I would have liked to have seen something more about educational and how the schools in Norwich are going to benefit by this. I mean, that was mentioned during the speeches. And I've seen that we haven't got anything in there about when schools have been allowed to use it and stuff. And it's they're enough like a private club now as it is. So I was more worried about educational wise, but I will be voting in favour, and I'm going to move the recommendation to approve this as agreed in the papers. Can I have a seconder for that? If there's anyone, thank you, Councillor Hampton. And then we move on to that discussion. Anyone else wish to say anything? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'd just like to say I think I agree with everything that every other councillor has said in there, summing up. And I'm finding this a difficult decision because I was on the panel that approved the previous courts and I voted in favour for that. The issues around the methodology, it is what we deal with. I completely accept David's comments and everyone else's comments that it would not be sustainable for us to now say we can't use that methodology even when we've used it and approved it. Obviously myself, but I agree with your comments at the end that I think this is a materially different application due to the proximity to the houses that it's going to be built on. But that said, I mean, as Councillor Hampton pointed out, there can be action that can be taken later if the noise proves to be harmful to an unacceptable extent. I'm a believer in innocent until proven guilty, obviously, as most of our justice system rests on, so I suppose it should work for planning too. And if we are saying that the methodology is inconsistent, that does cut both ways, and perhaps things will not be as harmful as we'd hoped. But taking that with, again, in the spirit of if there are things we can do in the future, we should definitely do them.
Councillor Knight.
I thank everybody for what they've said. I wasn't on committee when that previous decision was made, and personally, I don't think that the methodology has been robust enough. I recognise that this committee has made decisions using that in the past, but I was not here, so I don't necessarily feel that that is a representation of my thoughts on the matter. And without a cumulative assessment, I'm not sure I can vote in favour.
Councillor Kidman.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on the accepted assessment methodology, I concur with what Councillor Fox was saying about the fact we have already accepted that methodology, and there will be implications for now rejecting that. And also, I note that there may be an increase in noise in terms of the difference in decibels, but there's also a decrease in noise as the tennis matches can currently go until 10 o'clock at night, and also the lighting that goes with that. But it will all be stopping at 8 o'clock, not just the noise, but the light as well. But yeah, in particular, the noise from the matches or games will be stopping much earlier than they currently do.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, we'll move to the bill. The bill is that the recommendation is to approve. That's been seconded. All those in favour, please show.
So, Chair, that's a recorded vote. So just bear with me while I call out your name. Voting in favour are Councillor Driver, Fox, Hampton, Kidman, Lubbock and Smith.
Those against?
And against is Councillor Haynes and Knight.
Thank you. It's been agreed that the recommendation has been approved. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.